Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Two Psychics. This is Michael Edley, evidential medium and mystic, discussing all things spiritual.
Hello, I'm Mary Amy of Two Psychics, an intuitive wisdom coach, tapping into your mystical life and sharing messages I receive about you.
Good evening, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here. This is Michael Edley, psychic medium, one of your co-hosts for Blog Talk Radio. And this has been a good, restful, I would say, coming out of that holiday week. We took last week off, and my wonderful co-host, Mary Amy, is just coming back in from Florida. So what's up, Mary Amy? How are you? Are you feeling...
Hi, I'm so glad I'm here. It feels like I haven't been here in weeks and weeks and months, but it was only a 1 week off because it just got complicated with the 4th of July, and I hope everyone out there had a wonderful holiday weekend. There it was that Thursday, and we got a chance to, I hopefully got to see some fireworks and celebrate and eat some yummy food and maybe go swimming, and I did have a lovely time in Florida, and I was with some family and friends, and it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Nice, yeah. Did a little barbecuing. You know, I was the funny thing with fireworks, I appreciate the fireworks and I like the fireworks and I can really get into them, but I have one dog that doesn't really get bothered by them and another one that hates them, absolutely hates the fireworks. So I tried to balance my time out and out of the house when fireworks are going off with my time in the house and with my pets, just to give them a little bit of that security and they're okay around the fireworks. I also will play music and I'll have different sounds and I'll have, frequencies going for them and some different things to try to soothe the pets around the fireworks. But, it was good. I got to spend some time with some different friends. I got to enjoy some downtime, but I was still navigating my dog Molly's medical condition. We're still trying to figure out with her what's going on, and so we're kind of narrowing it down. So that's been a good thing. That's been a positive thing. I know we all love our pets, and we've talked about animal communication. So I've actually been working more and more with trying to just connect on a telepathic level to my animals, and it's been a really, really interesting dynamic. I've always done that, and I've always kind of communicated on an energetic level, but I didn't put a lot of time and energy into it. It would be like what naturally unfolded. And what's funny is I found that as I was trying to mentally, telepathically explain to my dogs that the fireworks are okay, it's a celebration, it's a temporary thing, I actually feel like it soothed and calmed the one. And the other one, it really didn't make a difference. He just hates them either way or whatever is going on. Thunderstorms, fireworks, any kind of loud noises, he's the one that wants to kind of hide. He can't fit under the bed because he's 100+ pounds, but if he could, he probably would. But it was good. Refreshed, rejuvenated. I'm a little closer, hopefully, to my dog being healed. And, yeah, it was weird. What was interesting for me is I found myself missing not having the radio show. I was like Thursday, and I was like, wow. It was good and relaxing, but I was like missing it. I was like, oh, so I'm really glad to be back on tonight. Really glad to hear your wonderful voice, and really glad we're back with our listeners.
Oh, that's one. Yeah, I do feel like something was missing, and I got kind of confused even, and I because it's part of my routine now. Because here we are, Two Psychics, episode 23. It's all about Bigfoot and cryptids, and we have a guest, Reles, and he's a Bigfoot investigator, and about Molly, and I'll tell you, I had, when I got back from Florida, I didn't feel good for a few days because I got sun poisoning.
Ooh,
and
okay.
I hadn't gotten sun poisoning since I was a kid, and I didn't really realize what symptoms, like my face hurt, I felt really uncomfortable on the plane ride. I wasn't burned. It was something else. It almost was just like I got too much sun, and I put sunscreen on, 70 and 50, but I was in the water a lot. And so I listened to the podcast that we did with Laura Steinfeld. And I listened to that. Yeah, and I wanted to hear it. And so Molly was on my mind. Molly's been on my mind since I got back from Florida. And I was saying to myself, oh, my gosh, how's Molly doing? Is she okay? And I was wondering about any of you listeners out there. So Molly is, what's the type of dog Molly is?
Molly is a Bernese Mountain Dog. Big, furry, fluffy dog.
Yeah, and your distress has been because she's only 2.5 years old. And
no, she's a little bit older now, so that's what I had all the dates mixed up, probably when we were originally talking, but she's 4. So she's 4 years old now.
4. Okay.
She's a little bit older.
And she had issues, and you changed the food, and then Laura, the pet psychic, you can find her info on our podcast, or you can just look her up on a search engine. She recommended, based on what Molly said to her, because she whispered that she didn't feel good and something under her arm, and she just didn't feel good, right? She was achy, and she was, what else was it? Her stomach ache?
She was just explaining, some symptoms, I guess, some nauseous and different things that were going on. And that's, kind of part of that, allowing the healing to unfold, trying to let the dog kind of show us or tell us, or let's, try to narrow this down to what's going on. So it's been a process. It's definitely been a process. It's been an interesting, long journey, but trying to communicate and trying to get the information. What's interesting, what I find is, even like for those of you that are listening, and even if you don't feel like you're getting a telepathic connection, and if you don't feel like you're getting, images, or or hearing what you think is your dog's voice in your head or different things, I can tell you the energy connection definitely builds, and you definitely start to pick up on the emotions. And so what I started doing is just energy healing, and I was putting, energy healing over her body into my hand, laying of the hands, doing healing on her. I was, praying over her, a lot of different things. And, I definitely noticed some improvements. Now we also do a lot of, we've been on a journey. My wife is very big into homeopathic medicines and a lot of holistic healing, different healing modalities. So we're kind of on a little bit of a non-traditional journey, and we're combining that with some traditional healing. So it's been a blend. And we are getting closer. We just ruled out several different things, and now her urine is being cultured, and they're going to see what will grow in it. When initially there was no bacteria could show up in it because of some different situations around the urine, what was going on with it, different antibiotics that she already had in her system, so it kind of masked what was there. So a whole process that's been along where I'm basically probably 2 months into this of trying to figure and sort out what's going on. And the crazy thing for those of you out there that, haven't tried different holistic or homeopathic medicines, absolutely look into it, because the crazy thing is we've seen some very dramatic improvements in her side, because she had to come off the antibiotics for a certain period of time to see what bacteria would grow in her system. So during that time period, we couldn't do, these last 14 days, we couldn't do any antibiotics with her. There was some blood in her urine. She was urinating, small amounts to large amounts, different, in frequencies and not in her normal routine. We started giving her different homeopathic remedies. And I don't want to go into all the, down that road tonight. I know we have a different show in store, but I could tell you there is so much to that, and there is so much to non-traditional medicines that can allow healing, not just in us, but in our pets. So in a future episode, we're definitely going to have to talk about some different holistic healing modalities and a lot of things we can incorporate outside of your traditional medical care that can definitely benefit not only us as humans, but our pets as well.
Thank you for sharing that. I have been very much tuned into my puppy dog, Elsa, who's a Havanese, and she now looks at me differently. It's very interesting, and I do send her messages by visualizing whatever it is. Like, for example, Laura had said, the pet psychic spoke about when you come home or when you're going to come home, visualize and send some kind of telepathic message to your animal to say what that means. And so I will say to her, because she looks at me like, when are you coming back? I'll visualize the time of day, what it looks like to her, so she knows. But on a whole, there's definitely something that shifted in a good way, where I'm more tuned in. She'll come around, and it's almost like her behavior will lead me in a direction of something that she needs or wants. So I'm going to share with everyone out there that it's really, really, really helpful for us. It's all about communication. Just like communication for us as psychics, we are communicating, whether I speak about speaking to angels, or Michael speaks about spirit, or if we're sending messages to an animal. It's all about communication. And our thoughts are powerful, and they are a charged impulse, and they carry emotions and feelings. So just be aware of that. I wanted to, on another note, I wanted to mention before I start speaking about Bigfoot and cryptids, and we're going to bring on our guest, which I'm super excited about. I've known him for quite a while. I wanted to mention, I have told everyone how I've written this dream journal, and it has 100 entries for you to fill out, and your sleeping dreams are super important. So I kind of turned a corner. Ever since I did that sweat lodge, something shifted. In fact, we're going to do another one in a few weeks where I'm going to be on the outside of it. I'm not going to go in, but I'm going to capture the energy through being around it. So I definitely released a lot. I've now been talking in my sleep and telling stories. Also, I'm working on this, I guess you could say, being a contactee for negative and positive extraterrestrials, angels, and spirits. And I went through my dream journal. And you know what's so interesting, everyone, I would like to share with you, is that if you write a dream journal and you fill out these entries and you go and look back from a few years ago, like I'm looking back at 2021, I see a severe pattern, and it kind of breaks my heart because it was the same thing I was living through over and over again. So it's beneficial for you to have some kind of dream journal to acknowledge what your sleeping dreams are. While you're sleeping, things are coming out, information, symbols, data, some kind of something, a message, and you can find something out about yourself that you might not find, especially if you have a really busy life. So that's my recommendation to you. So do you have anything to add about dreams, Michael? Because we're going to bring him on in about 17 minutes. Do you want to?
Everything you said, that's one thing I recommend to all my clients that I'm doing readings to, and if stuff starts coming to them in a dreamlike state, a lot of times what people need to realize too in that dreamlike state, sometimes that's the easiest point of contact for our loved ones in spirit to reach out and connect to us. Sometimes that waking mind is so preoccupied, the rationale thinking and that process analysis blocks out a lot of times that psychic intuition, that tuning in, that mediumship language, that language of energy. So in a dreamlike state, our loved ones can find that opportunity to drop that message into us. So don't discredit that. If if anyone is coming to you, or like Mary Amy said, if you're getting a message or information, jot that down. That could be some of the most important stuff coming to you. And there's many different aspects to that. That could be your soul speaking to you, loved ones trying to connect, a number of different things. So yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that I'm finding. I'm going back to some of my old journals, some of my old notes, different things around, not just dreams, but when I'm in a deep meditation, I'll also come out and I'll take notes and I'll kind of journal what came to me through periods of deep meditation. And, I look for different information through that, and see if there's any connecting information through several different meditations I'm doing, or, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of information that we can gather from that. So talking about animals earlier, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about cryptids and,
I will. Okay,
animals.
on a footnote related to the sleeping dreams, I just want to say that there is, every time we do something, like, for example, here we are, Michael and I coming, it's episode 23. We do have an objective, which is basically to change the world and bring light and love. And there is value. So don't forget that. Sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit for things that we are doing on a daily basis because we're like, oh, everyone else is doing that. But, if you take time to follow up on your interests, maybe it's something creative. Maybe it's something that's service to others, regular walks in nature. All of these things might seem on the surface like nothing, but they do have a value. And there is something within your spirit that is following your heart. So as soon as you become clear and you realize exactly who you are, you come to terms with your truth, you will begin to really go through a portal, a doorway into your personal journey. Okay, everyone, I'm really, really excited tonight to share with you. Here we are, episode 23 of Two Psychics, and it's all about cryptids and Bigfoot and guest Rick Reles. He's a Bigfoot investigator. Okay, so what exactly is that? Well, first off, let me tell you, Rick is a Bigfoot investigator. He is an investigator for BFRO, Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. And in 2010, he was driving across northern Wisconsin with business associate, and he encountered a Sasquatch crossing the road, which is another word for Bigfoot, a.k.a. And Rick became enamored with the Bigfoot world, thus speaking at conferences, podcasts. Here he is tonight with us, leading 6 to 8 expeditions, which he's going to share with us. I'm excited. He has a few that he just recently did annually in the U.S. and Canada. And he is a searching for Bigfoot explorer, investigator, expeditioner, and I call him an expert. He has a field guide that you can find online called the Bigfoot Stick, and it's all about these structures that Bigfoot in the woods, in the forest, put together. And it's kind of something that they're speaking to us. That's their form of communication with us. He's been a consultant for Animal Planet Finding and a Bigfoot partner in I Know Squash merchandise, which you can find on the profile. And there's many, many items that have Bigfoot likeness. He has had a Class A, B, C interactions with Bigfoot. Now, here we go. Now, what exactly is a cryptid? Well, we know Bigfoot's a cryptid. Now, cryptids are animals believed to exist, yet not proven. They're species of animals not scientifically substantiated, which are elusive and live in the wild. These mysterious animals remain of a myth, a legend, and folklore to the public. I believe in Bigfoot. I believe in the Loch Ness Monster. So here are some examples. The Loch Ness Monster originated, the rumor, in 1933, Scottish folklore. A beast with flippers, an enormous 20-foot animal, sea serpent from Scottish Highlands. Kind of, you would say, a dragon prehistoric type of creature known as Nessie. So visitors experience sightings and enormous footprints. I did do some research only to find out, funny enough, that those doing some kind of boating had took out some insurance saying if they got bit by Loch Ness, they'd receive some money. Go figure, there's such a thing. Now, Sasquatch is the second known cryptid, or spoken about. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, is a hairy creature living in the forest of North America and Canada. This folklore recites stories of a very tall, 6 to 10 foot tall, smelly creature. Number 3 is the and I'm going to butcher this word, Chupacabra. And that's known as a goat sucker, which drains the blood from livestock. It has red eyes and 4 to 5 feet tall. It stands on 2 legs, and it has spikes on its back and long claws. And number 4, the Yeti, which is known as the abdominal snowman. And its tracks were discovered in the Himalayan mountain range in Asia, and they dwell below the Himalayan snow line. A large, hairy, bipedal, close body, fur with a powerful chest, and it has a high-pitched cry. So Yetis are known to be 200 to 400 pounds, 6 foot tall, and grayish-reddish brown fur. All right, so to move on a little bit more about Bigfoot before we bring on Rick, I'm going to tell you. So now, if anyone wants to learn all about some kind of encounters or sightings on Bigfoot, you can go online and go to BFRO dot, I think it's .org or .net. We'll have to ask Rick. He'll know the answer to that. And this Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization was founded in 1995 with encounters, reports, recordings. So who is Bigfoot? Well, that's a phenomenon known in folklore and the legend of Sasquatch by many names depending on the language. There's more than 60 terms for Sasquatch in the Native American Indian tribes across North America. Sasquatch, the word means wild man. The elusive species known as Bigfoot is regarded with great respect as special type of creature by the Native Americans. The Hopi, the Sioux, the Iroquois, I can't say these words, seen as sort of a supernatural or spiritual being. It's luck to see him and for him to touch you. So since the 1960s to present, thousands of accounts. There's been thousands. Now, I always thought, funny enough, until I spoke to Rick a bunch of years back, we got to know each other because I did interviews. He told me, Mary, there isn't one Bigfoot. There's thousands. He's going to share that with you. So there are thousands of these Bigfoots, and there's little Bigfoots, there's adults, and there's children, and they move in families and packs. There's sightings in the Pacific Northwest of a large 6 to 9 foot ape-like creature walking upright, covered in brown, dark brown, black, or dark reddish fur. And it has a foul smell, and it lives in the wilderness, and this cryptid has language of sounds. There's evidence of tracks, footprints, hairs that are not animal or human, and their sightings they're very similar to each other with eyewitness accounts. Even the FBI looked into Bigfoot. The famous 1967 footage of Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin video. Everyone knows that. So a Bigfoot glides. Now, I can give you a few samples. We're getting closer to the time we bring on our guest. It's getting exciting. Some recent Bigfoot sighting samples that you can find on BFRO, okay? I looked into it. I went to it. I went to the whole entire PDF. So recently, May 9th to May 12th, there was a Bigfoot Field Researchers expedition in Minnesota. There was 18 people. So you got to read exactly what each of these people experienced. And notes were taken. So here's some of the notes. There was thermal peaking above tall weeds 20 to 30 yards. There was 30 minutes of a brilliant flash of white behind. All right, so this took place on May 9th. Here's some of the notes. At 10:30 p.m., someone said there was shivers running down my spine. At 10:40 p.m., something to my left rear was watching us. A moving bright amber light to north of the road. I saw a pair of amber light eyes looking at me and blinked. 3 sets of eyes. These appeared to swing back and forth as if a group of entities walking towards us. At 11:25 p.m., there was a splash and large rock clackling against other rocks. And midnight, here's some things that happened. Woo woo, because they make these sounds behind me, and Rick can do it for you. A pair of red eyes, bright pair of eyes, red eyes, more green eyes in trees 20 feet up, and something running, clicking sounds. It was definitely a stinky arm smell, and a soft whoop and a white flash. All right, before I bring him on, I just want to share with you there are upcoming expeditions you can find on the website. It's pretty exciting. In California, July 18th to 21st, there's an expedition. Washington, July 18th to 21st, August 8th to 11th. In North, there's also expeditions in North Arizona in August, Colorado, August, Northern New Mexico, Ohio, British Columbia, West Virginia, Missouri, East Texas. Now there's one in Northern New Jersey, which I'm considering going in October. All right, I feel like that's enough to share for tonight.
One in New Jersey, huh? So that could be a dual. See, the New Jersey one, that could be a dual adventure. You know, we have Bigfoot / the Jersey Devil. You know, and we go on that expedition. That would be cool. You know, coming from Jersey, you know, you got a Jersey boy here, and Yeah, we grew up here in Jersey with our own cryptid, the Jersey Devil, and I've had some pretty wild experiences as a young kid, a teenager, deep in the woods. Growing up here in the Pine Barrens with unimaginable amounts of forest and trees and just unexplored habitat. We've had some pretty interesting things happen, and we could probably do a show on that. But yeah, it's very, very interesting, and I think what's so intriguing, just as humans, where these things that are shrouded in mystery, when there's these old legends or myths or folk tales, we want to explore, we want to try to figure out what's going on, what's real, what's not real. But with the amount of animals and plant life and things that they're discovering every year, when they go deep into the rainforests, even search, deep aquatic ocean life, the things that they're uncovering, they never thought they would see or they never thought they would find. So that's my feeling, is who's to say these animals, these cryptids aren't there? They are there. I think there's a great possibility, since we haven't even explored all of our oceans, and completely documented all of our ocean territories, and deep into some of these rainforests. Who knows what's there, And then, depending on the philosophy of, could these things be like an alien hybrid that were put here, or these ancient creatures that have just been shrouded in mystery and have kind of been able to hide and live in the outskirts of human existence. So it's really intriguing. And I can't wait. I can't wait to hear what Rick has to say. It's going to be a very interesting show tonight.
Well, I have to say my theory is, and he knows some of this, because there's all these balls of light that appear. I believe that they are a species of extraterrestrials, and they move in and out of dimensions, and they have this powerful frequency that they can zap you, and it puts you in a state of fight or flight, and you can't move. And we're going to hear his take on it, which I'm super excited. I think that they might have been exactly what you just said, or maybe they are time travelers and they come here and this is one of the planets they visit. I don't know, but I've had dreams in the past, sleeping dreams with Bigfoot. I've had one come into my home, and when I was scared it was going to take my Elsa. It's very interesting, and I don't know why that is, but they were prominent in my dreams for a while. Okay, so I think it's time for me to bring on Rick, because I can't wait any longer. Now, I have to tell you.
The suspense.
I know, the suspense. I'm going to read what he had written me. Let's see. So, he has had 2 Bigfoot expeditions this year, and he has a caseload of 12 witness reports from BFRO ongoing. And he said that right now it seems as though there's a lot of Bigfoot sightings. So let's find out what that's all about, and let's bring him on. He's in the green room. So here we go. This is Reles, and he is, I say, a Bigfoot expert. Rick, you there? Hello.
Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Did you hear
Hey,
us?
Rick, how are you? This is
Mike
Michael.
How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Real good. I enjoyed listening to your build-up.
Oh. So I just have to ask, before we get into the Bigfoot, being a Jersey boy here, do we any interest or any information in regard to the Jersey Devil or any interactions between the two?
Yeah, and so anything is fair game with me. So any of these topics, if I don't know, I'll be the first to say I don't know, but I do know a little about the Jersey Devil and the Pine Barrens. I'm originally from New York, by the way. So
okay.
I live in Western North Carolina right now, but I actually took a report from a witness who saw something in the Pine Barrens, but it was more of and you didn't mention this, Mary, but it was more of a dogman description. He had a very clear description of it as, standing up, 6.5 foot tall, black, long nose, type of dogman. It was a dogman description. That's another cryptid that's out there that people see a lot. But the Jersey Devil, a lot of the reports of that have it flying overhead when it's seen. But it has been around for a long time, and that's a vast amount of land, forested. And I know the show Finding Bigfoot went in there and looked, and there's a lot of strange things that happen in there. So it could be a good intersection of, it's just a place where there are cryptids that appear.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, absolutely. So just before we kind of get into the whole Bigfoot, the foundation of what got you into it, what you're doing now, can I ask you, what, from all your experience at this point, where do you see the investigations heading? Is this going more mainstream, or is it still going to stay underground for a while, or like where is the cryptid industry, the cryptid investigating? Like where are we with that right now?
It's a good question. So a couple of things. Number one, the BFRO is still, and thanks for that discussion, Mary. The BFRO is still the place for people that have an encounter or an experience. It's a place for them to report it. And it's bfro.net is where you can go. And you can see on there any of the vetted out reports. I'm an investigator. We've got, I'd have to check, but we had 250 people around the country that do what I do, which is we pick up reports in a geographic area, typically where we can get to within half a day's drive or so, and talk to the witnesses. I like to try to go out to where the encounter or the experience happened and try to validate. If it's valid and it gets vetted out, we see behavioral characteristics that match up from report to report. And when you can validate it, it's not a hoax, and we do get hoaxes, then that will make its way onto the site. And you can go on bfro.net. If any of your listeners are interested, they want to look for activity near them, they can look right to the county they live in and see what type of activity has taken place over the years. Now, that's not all the reports that have come in, but it's the ones that have been investigated.
Wow, how cool is that? That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and the ones that are investigated and vetted out then get a class designation. Class A means you clearly know it was not a human or a bear, and it was seen. The witness saw and experienced it with a direct visual encounter. Class B would mean it's a little less than that. It was heard or felt, sort of seen, but not as distinguishable. And C could be something that was heard or passed on, but is still valid information, a newspaper article, etc. So we do have 3 class designations for what gets reported and put on the site that you can see. I would say that to answer the other part of your question, Michael, there's probably more reports now than in the past. I've been doing this for a number of years. I got interested in this starting in 2010 because I had a sighting. Mary referenced that earlier.
Yeah.
And I dove into it. I didn't go the other way. I had to find out more and more. And it's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving. I just keep staying fascinated with it. But people have cell phones. People are out. There's a lot of things that are mistaken for what could be Bigfoot or a cryptid. But people record things now, whether it's audio or visual, and they bring them forward a lot. So a lot of times now when we get reports, there's audio. I've had some really good audio recently. Howls, whoop-type noises, screams from the woods, forest, etc. So that's good. Years ago we didn't get that. But I think the cell phone has helped people come forward and people are used to it. It used to be you could have a Bigfoot encounter and no one would bring it up because they didn't want the shame of public humiliation. Can't come forward and talk about that in our town, sort of thing. But I mean, I've had witnesses break down in tears telling me about this because they've had activity on their property for decades, that sort of thing. So just getting it off their chest. But today people come forward a lot more readily. But you do get a lot of misinterpretations, unusable reports also. So I do think there's more. And 2 other things. I think the shows, Finding Bigfoot, that show brought it out into mainstream from an awareness standpoint. And now you have Expedition Bigfoot, so that's another show, which and they go out in the woods and they're going into a research area on the show. A good thing about Finding Bigfoot is they went out to all the different states where there was activity. It had a town hall type meeting and would bring witnesses in and they would talk to the 4 investigators and they would just share that's probably the best part of the show. They would share their experiences and talk right right to them in the camera about what went on and in a town hall format. And that was fascinating to learn and hear the different things that people experience.
No, that's pretty awesome. And I think it's making people, so basically bringing this to the forefront, it's allowing people to be more comfortable in bringing their information forward and, not hiding in the shadows that we can't talk about this. So people are going to think I'm crazy talking about this. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing all the way around. Absolutely. Absolutely. The popularity of it can only enhance what the truth is, the underlying truth is going to be.
Right.
I go to this coffee shop, or it's not coffee shop. It's a little, a little store that you get coffee and you can get some market things, and it's a block from my house, and it's become so prevalent, Bigfoot, that I walk in and there's a whole wall of hats, and there's of course there's a Bigfoot hat. I was like, oh my God, I have to have this. And so it's my favorite hat. And it's funny, the expressions on people when they look at me and then they look at my hat, and then they're kind of, they tilt their head a little bit. They're like, wait, what? Like, is she wearing big? Like, but they know. People are so familiar with this. So I believe that it's coming more to the forefront. Or it might just be that, it's in my mind, but it seems like the public is being more open to it and more awakened about the possibility, because there are creatures, and maybe it's the whole alien saga that's been going on lately, and they're actually speaking about that and having press conferences about that. So let's get into some questions right now, mister. I want to ask you a few questions about I
always enjoy this part of things with you, Mary. You have always had great questions.
Well, I'm really simply going to go right to what you messaged me was, what has happened on these expeditions lately? What is going on? What's the latest experience you had? Did they stop you in your tracks? Did they mimic you? Did they throw little pebbles at you? What happened?
So, I try to get out. I run typically 1 or 2 expeditions a year. So that means, we vet out people that could go, people apply to go, and then we are out. So, Michael, and so your listeners know, an expedition, we're in the woods remotely, camping and walking through the woods, scouting during the day, out in the woods and at night, in places where there aren't people typically, but where maybe it's an area that has had some sightings, or an area that's been active over the years that's not too far, an adjacency. And we try to get into those places and put ourselves in a position that we can be viewed. So we're not hunting Bigfoot. You can't hunt Bigfoot. But we put ourselves out there, and we break into groups, 5, 6 people in a group, and we might have 30 people on an expedition and 5 groups, say. But we will go on out into spots, and we'll do things to provoke and create attention. Maybe we'll build a fire. We'll play some music, Native American music. We'll do some things. Bigfoots will communicate by knocking, making a knock noise. We'll do that. We'll initiate, or we'll respond. We'll do. You mentioned before in your buildup, I would make a sound, but we don't howl as much. If we hear a howl from them, that they're very powerful, and so we don't do a lot of that. But we will do whoops. They'll do a whoop noise, which is a shorter noise, like whoop. That's friendlier, and we will do that. We hear that, especially when they're coming around, as to investigate why we're there. But we put ourselves in a position to be observed. And you read Minnesota, some of the accounts from the Minnesota expedition recently, and that's not unfamiliar. Now, every time you do this doesn't mean you're going to have activity. But sometimes in a group, if they're around and the Bigfoots, we may pick them up on a thermal imaging camera, or they may peek around a tree or toss pebbles at us, or other kind of crazy things happen. You can have dialogue with them. They'll knock. You can knock back and forth if they're there. If they don't want you around, they'll let you know. They'll push a tree over near you, or they'll throw things. I've had logs thrown out of the woods at me, rocks that come sailing over my head. And I mean big rocks. But if they don't want you there, then for whatever reason, you got to go. Even Mary mentioned being zapped before, getting a frequency or a feeling of fight or flight. I've had that in varying levels, and that typically means we don't want you here, leave us alone too. And so I pay attention to that and leave. But we've had a lot of, interestingly enough, and I've been on 40 plus expeditions over the last 12 years probably. Yeah, all kinds of places from British Columbia to Florida and places in between. But we've had, and this is the thing I like to talk with you about, Mary, we've had a lot of orbs and lights in the woods, balls of energy, if you will. Orbs come out of the woods and come towards us. We're getting a lot of that reason, different colors. Hard to explain. I've seen them associated with Bigfoot over the years, but for some reason the energy level is really high with these cryptids right now. When I was on back in April and lived in the Blue Ridge Mountains, I can't disclose location, but three of us, I had two, another investigator from North Carolina, one from Atlanta, and we were in an area standing on an area that's had actually way back in the woods near a wildlife management area up in the mountains. But we saw two orbs come out of the woods. I was playing, again, provocation, I was playing an Irish flute. I was playing some flute music. And two orbs came out of the woods about 50 yards down a gravel road from us in the woods, all forested. And then one stopped, the other one continued right up the middle of the road towards us, elevated right in front of us like it was looking at us, and disappeared. Now, I mean, that's crazy. I've seen orbs and have this experience around Bigfoots before, observe them moving with intelligence. But when they come up to you and like they're investigating you, that really tells me there's some intelligence. And when you have, three sets of human eyes looking right at these things and it's right in front of you, it's hard to dispute.
It's like it's a spaceship or something that's viewing you.
Yeah, it's crazy. It does happen. We get witness reports of Bigfoot or seeing a Bigfoot, and all of a sudden there's orbs. I've had, for your listeners, over the years, I remember having a big group up in northern Wisconsin in a rock quarry, and it was a dozen people, and we had activity, things being thrown over the top of the rock wall at us. But all of a sudden these orbs came out of the woods behind us and circled all above the group up in the air like they were watching us. I was in Colorado on an expedition years ago, 5 of us in a canyon, and we had activity around us, Bigfoot's pushing trees down and stuff, and it was playful, though. It was not threatening. And all of a sudden, there's a cue ball colored orb comes over the top of the canyon wall, and it's in front of us, and it's right there looking at us. It's almost like it's a periscope for them. They can use it from a different angle to look at you. And it's taught me over the years, if you see an orb around, look the other way also. And sometimes there's activity the other way. They use it as a distracting mechanism, I think, too. But I don't know how they do it, but they can somehow get energy, manifest energy, and create these things. Or there are things that are with them when they're around. I don't know, but orbs, balls of light. You're more of an expert on light, white light, and that sort of thing than I am, Mary.
So Rick, my curiosity with your expertise and all the hours and study that you've put into this, what is your feeling? Do you think that the Bigfoot is a creature like this mystical ancient creature that maybe learned energy healing from an old human race? There was, hundreds of thousands of years on this planet with an old advanced race through Tataria, kind of evolved through us, or are they like an alien hybrid that was put here, or were they another creature here that aliens found interest in, or like, what's your theory, or where are you in that dividing line, or is it an ancient creature that's always lived amongst us? Or were they put here? Like, what's your philosophy behind that?
So those are all really good. That was a multi-parted question.
It is
very, very good. But I like it. And so I'll just talk, and you can jump in. Where I like what Mary said earlier too, and I can't dispute it. So it's funny, people that research this or get out and get involved in it, as I have over the years, talk to a lot of witnesses, spend a lot of time in the woods, spend a lot of time on expeditions, have encounters with these things. And I've seen these things, okay? I have experienced them with all my senses. So you're talking to someone that's not speculating.
Yes.
Just from reading books, although I've probably read 100 books on it. But I have seen these things. So you trust your eyes first, Michael, and I have visually seen these things. I've heard them. I've smelled them. I've had things thrown at me by them. I've cast their footprints. I've seen their hair. I've seen their feces, collected. I mean, I know they have physical characteristics. Okay, but they have paranormal abilities too, and paranormal things happen. What do you mean by paranormal? Well, I don't necessarily mean ghosts and that sort of thing, but things happen that we can't explain physically when you're around these things. And I have a couple of witnesses of habituation sites where these things are on their property, and I'll talk a little about that later. But they experience paranormal type things around them all, and they have them on their property all the time, and they experience things that are outside the physical realm. I don't know why that happens with these things, but they seem to be derivative of a creature that maybe, why would they need those abilities on a terrestrial planet? So that if they were indigenous and had been here forever throughout time and just evolved on this planet, why can, and I'll just spit out some of this. Why do orbs happen around them? Why do things you have, cell phones, GoPros, recording devices, why do they all go dead around them? Why do they zap energy? Why do you get zapped from them, and meaning you feel fight or flight, or you feel immobilized, or like you're being electrocuted around them? They do things like that happen with them. Box lights. We see lights like blue or white light in the woods when they're around. What is that? How does that happen? Why do their eyes give off a bioluminescent type of glow? And their eyes do emanate like a color. I've seen light blue, amber. You mentioned amber in the Minnesota report. I've seen amber. I've seen yellow. I've seen a greenish look. I've seen the eyes, one walking behind another up a trail in the woods. It was like blue light was emanating from the eyes on the ground ahead of them as they walked. That's not an ability that we know of any creatures on this planet having.
Well, see what not to cut you off, but what I find so interesting about that is everything you're explaining is like me as a psychic medium, me as a medium, an energy healer working with this energy. Things you're talking about, I see in my work. I see this stuff around humans. So my thing is, could these be really advanced? Even though we're looking at what we think is a primitive creature, or we think is a more animal-like creature, could they have been very highly evolved through ancient human civilizations, or kind of rose up among us? Humans kind of fell off and lost these abilities, where people, like myself and Mary and, other energy healers are getting back to that and kind of, I think, learning what humans have forgotten. Do you think they've just always worked with this energy, always worked with these abilities, found a way to manifest it in a way that humans are only awakening to now?
So I like where that's going. I like all of that. And I'm not, some of us who have researched this a long time get very dogmatic, drop into a camp of there's only physical evidence, and if it's not physical or concrete evidence, then it doesn't count. So they say anything that you're talking about, or we're discussing these other paranormal type activities that happen around them, are not evidence or not. So I'm not in that. I have not fallen into that camp. I believe it's all evidence, whether it falls on the list of things that we can, visual sighting is evidence. An audio of a howl or a whoop, or a knock. Those are things you can record and listen to later. That's evidence. A footprint cast. I've done that. I've got those. Hairs that you might collect from the site. Handprint cast. Or those are all pieces of physical evidence. That all counts. Stick structure that maybe, they are a glyph or something that they leave. Okay, that's all evidence. That's physical. But the other type of evidence, things we're talking about, I believe that's evidence too. So I'm not dismissive of other things that we're here. Like maybe you got an image in your mind around them. Minds speak. Maybe you talk about healing, or you talk about these balls of light. Another one. I've talked to witnesses that have seen them, and they're looking at them, and then all of a sudden they're not there. I experienced that once with a small one in a research area I had, and I saw it was about 4 foot tall coming down a path, and it just phased out. What 1 minute it was there, next minute it was gone. And I saw this small black 4 foot tall type of creature running bipedally towards the Y intersection of a path, and as it did, it just phased out, and I couldn't see it anymore. Now I can't explain that, but I'm not dismissing and saying it's not evidence. So I think having an open mind is right. So back to your question, why do they have these abilities? Are they things? Do we have those abilities and have lost them because they've all been calcified over time and they're going? I don't know the answer to all that, but if it's very possible these things are not indigenous, and if they have these abilities, why were they put on this planet? Now we'll look at them and say, oh, they're primitive. That's because the description of what they look like is more akin to an ape or a large, pognid/hominid type creature. I think they have very human characteristics. They aren't all just ape-and looking, but they are different looking too. A lot of witness reports will report them looking different. They're still bipedal and tall and hairy and long arms that are longer than human arms and reach down to their knees kind of thing, no neck. I've seen that. And a lot of reports will they will correlate. They'll come. You'll see that all the time. If you really want to see some good images, so it's for your listeners too. Sibylla Irwin, she's a friend of mine, but she takes witness encounters and does the police sketching type of thing with these, and she's got all this out online. Sibylla Irwin, IRWIN. Take a look at some of her drawings of these things, and you'll understand some of the differences and how they look. But to Mary's point earlier, there's a lot of them, and why are there a lot of them here on this earth? And they're not just North American, and they're not just a single creature running around Northern California. There are names for these type of creatures all around the world, and they're in lots of different places around the world. So why are they here? I don't know, but if they had a purpose and they were here for some reason, they're still here. And they're very observant and will watch us. They love to watch us, and there's a lot of them. Now, I don't know, why they're on the edge of humanity, on the edge of our existence, and they do pop in and out here and there, but why are they here? And if they're interdimensional, Mary, I'd challenge on that. Why are they here physically sometimes and not here? So what are they jumping in and out of? Now, I don't know anybody that's gone from one dimension to another that can speak and answer that. I certainly haven't. But now you see them, now you don't. Does happen with these things. So why do they have the abilities they do?
And then I guess you have to think: is it interdimensional, or have they managed to harness energy in such a way they can cloak their body, cloak themselves, cloak their auric field, or, I guess there's a lot of ways you can look at that, and that's very, very interesting. See, I'm intrigued just by knowing what I know about energy and what I've experienced, that there could be this highly advanced animal that we think is primitive, but has mastered, all the realms of quantum physics, or have an understanding of energy and how to manipulate energy and sound in a way we don't, or we're just getting to the the tip of the iceberg of that. So it's very, very interesting.
There's a book on that called Quantum Bigfoot. You might want to read. That's out there. Take a look at that. That's on that topic. It was written a few years ago too. And
cool. Quantum Bigfoot.
Yeah,
okay.
It's very, very and go ahead, Mary.
I realized tonight, and that I did a lot of personal research on Bigfoot. I was so interested in it for years, and I have many, many books. Obviously, I know nothing compared to your history, but what I'm realizing tonight is that Bigfoot now is very much coming to you at encounters, or people are having these experiences. And what is it touching? It's touching your senses. Like, they are telepathically communicating. I believe when they're speaking, they're not talking to you, although I know you've shared with me that they can mimic voices, and they're sending frequencies. So all of these things are exactly where humanity is moving to, which is interesting. And they've already tapped into this. What is going on with these homes that you said that you're finding out they're visiting regularly? What's happening there?
Well, so I like where you're going with that too. That reflection on humanity being able to tap into some of these things. Maybe that's why we're more aware of them now too. Who knows? Because I think they've been around a long time. But I have I have a couple of properties. One I've been associated with. It's in north central Tennessee. I've been associated with for about 5 years. And I frequently get back there, but I talk with the homeowners regularly. And they have 4.5 acres up against 11 acres, a lot of woods behind them, greenways. But they've got activity regularly. They've got an area in the woods down behind the property, shooting range actually, that they've had activity over the years. It's not even debatable. I mean, it's almost daily. They've had visual sightings. They have like stations that we leave toys and different fruits and food and different rock arrangements. We leave everything from, we tried everything to see what they respond to. Marbles to dice to pencil erasers, all sorts of things, glow sticks, and they interact. I mean, they will come around and interact with them, and we've documented all the changes too. And they see it. Bigfoot seem to see order in things that we don't. It's almost autistic, but like one of the things they'll do, we'll put something down to 4 seashells together. They'll separate one from the other 3. 4 rocks together on top of a stump. They'll take one of the rocks away, leave the other 3. So there's this constant repeat thing they do with 3 and 1, and I can't figure that out, but there's something going on there. But they will, some things they really respond to, and others they don't. The color blue doesn't occur very naturally in nature, so we leave things that are blue marbles, they'll take them. They like tactile things, like erasers or little rubber toys that kids play with. They put them on their finger. We put those things down there. They'll play with those. They'll take them. Then they bring them back 6 months later, that sort of thing. They'll leave gifts, or they'll leave glyphs on the ground out of sticks that they'll make, and there's repeat patterns to that. So there is interactive communication on some of these properties. And we have recorders out and get recordings of them, all sorts of things. And we were talking about the mimicking. It's fascinating to me. But I could go on and on about the noises they make. And you hear this at the different properties, too. They will observe and listen to what's going on in a homestead or a property. And let's say, for instance, the same noise happens. A dinner bell is rung every day. They'll mimic the dinner bell. Or they'll call for the kids to come to dinner, and it's a certain name. Hey, Jason, or something. All of a sudden out of the woods after a period of time. Hey, Jason. I mean, they will repeat what humans say almost like it's a game, like they're trying to have some fun with it. But they're very, very observant, and they're smart. They'll come down into gardens and harvest things if they want to and then go away. But, they'll sit and look and watch what's going on. It's almost like we're entertainment for them. That definitely goes on at habituation sites where it's friendly. Now, I've always encouraged witnesses that have them on their property to be friendly with it too, but always to establish boundaries. So, that side yours, this side ours kind of thing is very, very important with these things. Last thing you want them doing is up on your roof or banging on the outside of your house. And that kind of thing happens. So you have to, but if you establish, the woods are your side and the yard and the house is my side kind of thing. It's funny, they're fine with that. And I tell this story a lot, down to the point, I have one witness who's got a big apple tree in the corner of his property. When the apples ripen, and they harvest the apples on the side that faces the woods and leave all the apples on the side that faces the house. Okay, so it's sort of like, that's yours, this is mine. They have this crazy sense of order to them. But where you have ongoing activity, it's not like you're going to scare them away. You don't go running into the woods, shooting shotguns or screaming through, sirens at them. And I've heard of those types of things too. That just doesn't contribute to a healthy environment with them. You just kind of got to accept if they're there, they've probably been there a long period of time. Now you moved in, you're in a house, try to have a peaceful coexistence with them. But you do get paranormal things that go on too. And I had recently, the one in Tennessee, he got a hold of me the other night. He said, I just saw a football-sized orb go right across the back of my yard right at dusk. I mean, he just watched it travel right across his property. Why? I don't know. So things happen with these that are crazy. And the mimicking and the noises they make they like to make noises. We get a lot of recordings at this one property I monitor of staple guns and circular saws and metal on metal. And so after a period of time, we've discussed it back and forth. And I think they're observing house builders or home builders somewhere, and they're mimicking the noises that they hear on that site. And they just come around and make the noises almost like they know the witness is recording. So here, I'll bring back some noises I can make just to see if you'll enjoy. It's crazy. It really. I've heard on expeditions in the woods too, and doing this, I've heard all kinds of things, from car alarms in the middle of the woods where there's nobody around, way far away from cars, to babies crying. I mean, I've heard it all. I've heard the mimic when we do noises. I've heard voices right among us when there's nobody there. So they have abilities to do things that are crazy, and you do observe those at habituation type sites. I'll tell you about another. Well, go ahead, but I'll tell you about another.
No, the funny thing about them mimicking is, I mean, you hear similar stories with a different species. You hear that when people are working in the rainforest, or they're building, or they're constructing a village. Some of the different parrots or the minor birds, they'll pick up human voices. They'll mimic things, and they learn and they understand, what the humans are doing, and then they'll call for food, or they'll pick up a certain name, or they'll associate it with things. So it's very, very interesting. And yeah, I absolutely, I absolutely think it can happen. I think they can understand and learn, and there's definitely intelligence. There's definitely intelligence there. I mean, I think without a doubt, we could say that there's definitely an intelligence creature behind the fur and behind, the ape body or whatever that may be.
Yeah, there's intelligence, and it's different forms of intelligence than we have. And I've come to, be okay with that. But you can't assume that they're a primitive creature or an ape wandering around the woods. I'm way beyond that. But their intelligence, and again, I don't never think there's one. If you have an experience with a Bigfoot in the woods, there's never just one there. I always think there's several. I've had Native Americans, and the Native American approach to this is great. They're very respectful of it. They acknowledge it. I heard Mary say earlier, all the tribes in North America have a name for it. If you look at the face of the creature on a totem pole, the face that's on there that has the pursed lips is typically a depiction of a Bigfoot type character. But they all have respect for it. They just acknowledge it exists and it has these abilities, and is a supernatural as well as the physical type of character. But the intelligence is there, and mimicking might be part of it. Mimicking is useful for them. It's deflection. So if you're tuned in on them in one direction, think they're there, discovery-wise, there's a few of us, and we think they're in one area, we're pointing the camera at or whatever, it's very useful for them to make a noise from the opposite direction that scares you, to get us, it's tactical, to get us off our game and to move scared, etc. So mimicking is useful for them. They could do it in a lot of different ways. If they're threatened, they'll do it. They want to do it to talk with each other across distance without humans or other animals knowing they're there. It's useful. So it's a communication device for them, and they can use it. So that is a type of intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very interesting.
Based on their physical attributes, we're talking about a lot of what we're referring to. We said paranormal. We question it. There's a lot of mystery. But one physical attribute that is really strong is their smell. Do you have a theory on why they smell like that, and can you describe their smell? Do you know that they're coming?
Yeah, I'll give you my take on it. And again, any of my theories or reflections they're built on experience. So I've either talked with witnesses, a number of them that have had it, or I've experienced it myself. In the case of smell, I've experienced it. Even recently, I was on one in last fall in Tennessee, and the smell was overwhelming, and all of a sudden it showed up. I almost think they can. It's not like a skunk that has a scent gland and throws off droplets of a smelly substance that adhere to. It's more, for whatever reason, it's like they can turn it on, turn it off. I've been near Bigfoots where I didn't smell them, but I've also walked into it, all of a sudden left off a trail and started down another trail, and it was like a wall just hit me. I was with a couple of, a researcher from Minnesota years ago. I was up in northern Wisconsin. We got out of a vehicle on a trailhead, and as soon as we got out, boom, this smell just knocked us. As soon as we entered the trail, boom, just overwhelming. And we're used to it. We're out in the woods all the time. You know the smells of the forest. You know the smells of the different type of flora and fauna, different types of smells in the air. You know what a decaying possum smells like, or a carcass, or you know those things. Bigfoot, the smell, it almost is like they can use it to repel you or get you to stop in your tracks, because when it hits hard. It's not a gradual thing. All of a sudden you take a turn on a trail and a switch back, and boom, it hits you. That's how I've experienced it. That's how witnesses typically tell me about it. It's not a gradual thing that all of a sudden, it can be repugnant to the point that you want to turn around and leave. How they do it, I don't know. Why they do it, I think because it's useful for them. What does it smell like? I've had it smell, it's disgusting. People will say feces, urine, decaying flesh, that sort of thing. It's not good. It's not musky, like some animals have a musk type smell.
So it's not like a skunk. Would you compare it to like a skunk type smell, or is it something totally different than that?
I would compare it more to sewage.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, okay. Urine, sewage, bad smell, rotten, something rotten. A skunk is acrid.
Yeah,
you get hit with a skunk sprays you, and you drive through it. It's got this sting, acrid to it. The Bigfoot smell is more rotting, decaying feces, kind of awful smell. Now, maybe it's coming from them. I don't know. I'm sure it's coming from them somehow. But, how they can control it is fascinating to me. I mean, I've been near them. All of a sudden, I realized there's one right behind me in the woods. They push a tree over or something. I was, and I could tell stories all night, but I was on one in North Georgia years ago, and 3 of us were perched on a ridge, and right on the ledge we were doing some howling and call blasting. We were getting responses below in a valley down below us. We heard some movement behind us, but didn't get up, and we dismissed it, but one of us in our group just took a thermal and turned the thermal all the way around us after a while, and as soon as we got to the area this thing was, it stood up and ran, and we clearly heard a set of 6 bipedal steps right out of the wooded area behind us into a field. And to this day, it still pisses me off that thing got that close to us. I mean, it was literally sitting right behind us, and no smell. So, how does that happen? I had a Bigfoot literally steps behind us, sitting there observing what we were doing. Probably could have pushed us right off the cliff if it wanted to, but it was right there. Now it didn't smell. So that is always, I've scratched my head over that for years. If it was just a natural occurring smell that they have, how do they not, how come it's not there sometimes? And it is not there a lot of times. So but they use it somehow, and I can't figure that out.
I'm starting to wonder if everything that we think is Bigfoot is actually not. In other words, is that really what they look like, or is that the way they mask who they are? Because you made a point where you said that they are intelligent, but because of the way they look, we think that they maybe are stupid, like not stupid, but not human thoughts or primitive because they're ape-like. But I wonder if they really look like that, or that's something they put on themselves. Now I'm starting to question everything about Bigfoot.
That's one of the things I like about you, Mary. You have an expansive mind.
So, Rick, let me ask you this question. So one of our listeners was out there, and they were like, I want to join Rick on an expedition to go try to track and find Bigfoot. What's the protocol? What do they have to do? Obviously, with such a sense of smell, you can't, like 2 weeks without showering before you can even be considered to go to the woods. Like, what's the protocol behind it?
So, good question. You can go to bfro.net, and expeditions are listed. Mary read some, and we run, different investigators like myself will run 1 or 2 a year kind of thing. So you might have a year where there's 8 or 10 across the nation, or maybe twice that. But typically they'll be, as I said, in a geography, using a campground and, departing from the campground area at night, going out in the woods and, all over an area where there's been activity. But it's, wooded, it's remote. Sometimes it's very remote. Sometimes there are no showers for days kind of thing. And, I've been on a lot of those. Or no cell phone, no service, no nothing. We go into places like that too. But people could sign up if they're interested in one. So let's say there was one in North Jersey, like you mentioned. Maybe it's up in the Poconos or a mountain somewhere, and you're interested in going. You could sign up. You can see online, say, hey, I want to go on that. And an investigator that is running it will get a hold of you. There'll be typically a half hour, an hour conversation by phone, just talking it through with you, what to expect. Sometimes that takes people right out of it, and they never respond. But talking about what to expect, what to bring, how to be prepared. And then there's a series of documents. There's a non-disclosure agreement, medical release, some other information documents that are filled out that the BFRO puts on record. And we typically, one of the things about it, why we have this, we just don't want the media there. I mean, we definitely don't want the media out on these things. And so we are very discerning and discriminating who we bring, and if we try to get manage a group. I like groups of 30 people or so. I think is a good size when I manage one of these. But we'll put a group together and then set up a Facebook page and that's private and invite only. And then we don't disclose the location exactly until we get closer to the event. But we tell people everything they need once they're approved. There's a fee. The BFRO sets that. I don't set that. And it's not. I think at first timers it's like $400, but a second time around, if you've done it before, at half the fee goes down to half of that or something. But there's get you prepared, everything you need to bring, equipment, foods, sustenance, be ready for clothing, things to be ready for in the woods. I mean, the woods I always tell people the woods are a lot colder and wetter than you think, and you got to be prepared, first aid kits, all that kind of thing, because stuff happens. And then it leads up to the date, and then it's disclosed where people meet at that site. Typically, they get there on a Thursday midday, and it runs through Sunday midday when everybody departs. But be ready to not get some sleep. A lot of times we're out in the woods still, all hours of the morning. And if there's activity, we don't come back till it's over a lot of times.
Have you been like 2 or 3 days in and you have that one person going, I can't do this anymore. This is too freaky. I need to get out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's definitely happened. I've witnessed it. I've been on it. I've seen it. I was on one in Colorado years ago, and the first night there was a father's daughter team that was there. She was college age, and we had some serious activity in different areas too. I mean, we had one group in tents, and these things were poking on their tents and grabbing at them and every other thing. But they were remote tenting and right off a trail, and I mean, it was a very active night just to start. Sometimes you get there and it's really active. Other times nothing, and all of a sudden one night it goes crazy. But the first night, this father-daughter, they had a visual encounter, and they came back, packed up all their stuff, and 2:30 in the morning, the tent and everything was down, and they were gone. And I mean, we were way up in northwest Colorado, remote. I mean, it was 3 hours to get back to civilization kind of thing, and they were out of there. Like, we can't take this. So I have seen that before. I've seen people leave on a Saturday night. I was on another one, father, son. They left on a Saturday night, and one I was on years ago. And again, they're scared. And on the way out, as they were leaving, they had a visual encounter. So, yeah, it can be overwhelming. It can.
I guess that's a pretty good testimonial, right? That's a pretty good testimonial without having the testimonial.
Right.
Definitely something there.
Michael, it gets freaky.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. And that's what it just brings me back to, those teenage days where we would go exploring, or even, as a scout. I was a Boy Scout growing up, and we would have, we're going for this survival merit badge, and here we are dropped out in the middle of the woods for several days, and I mean, there would be some freaky stuff we would encounter. So I can only imagine people going in really not knowing what to expect. Something crazy like that happens, and everyone's brave. Everyone wants to be on the front line till Sasquatch jumps into the camp. No, it's interesting. So I was just curious what you would experience with people kind of wanting to abandon the camp after they have an encounter.
And it's okay if they do, and we tell people, if you're uncomfortable, and when you're out with a group at night, we tell them, if anybody in the group feels uncomfortable, speak up. You all have, because everybody gets a role in the group when we go out. So somebody is recording and writing things down, either on their cell phone or on a pad in the woods as we have activity. Time we arrive, provocation we do, things we hear, things we see. It's all documented. We compare notes the next day. Next morning, there's a 2-hour session with whiteboards out where we document, put down everything for every one of the groups that went on, and we compare notes. And we do talk about, because they communicate differently. They'll communicate by knocking, sometimes clacking rocks together. And we see differences in that in geography where you are. In some parts of the country, they communicate different than they do other places. So we are very, very interested in that as we go. So everybody in a group gets a job. And if you're in a group and you feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, you have a duty to speak up. And I've seen it. I've seen that happen where all of a sudden the tallest and largest person in the group gets really freaked out, and they're getting a frequency or a negative frequency from the Bigfoots there because they don't want you in the particular area. They'll pick the alpha male out in the group typically and make them feel heebie-jeebies, and you're thinking the rest will all leave. And there's some truth to that. So I've seen that happen many times. I've been that alpha male. I've had that happen. So, but a lot of times it's very pleasant. You can have dialogue with them. So if you're there, knock. They'll knock. We knock. You could do two light knocks. They'll do 2 light ones back. You get in this dialogue back and forth. You can do a whistle or a whoop. They'll do one back in response. You'll hear them talking. They'll toss small pebbles out. that's friendly. They're just gaming or playing with you. We could leave. We'll hang glow sticks in the woods and invite them to come around and grab them. You'll see all of a sudden the glow stick gets picked up off the tree and taken away, or a hand goes up and reaches around it. When you have that kind of thing going on at night in the woods with them, then everything's very polite and it's fun, and you can go away and talk about it next to them. My gosh, we're in the presence of them. And they'll interact with the things you leave. You can leave things on the trail as you walk that glow. Those little tea lights, those little plastic tea lights, we'll put those on a trail behind us like cookies that you're leaving. And sometimes you look back down the trail and they're disappeared, or there's something picking it up, handing it back and forth to another one. If it's that kind of a thing and they're curious, like we have juveniles that are curious, it's fun, it's great. But if you go into an area and they don't want you there for whatever reason, and they're screaming bloody murder at you or throwing logs out of the woods, or I was in a spot once where they were pushing down birch trees and just throwing birch trees right out of the woods above us down into the path next to us. That's pretty intimidating. So you got to say, all right, I talk to them. I say, all right. And I don't know if they understand English or not, I wonder. But I know they understand intent. And I do think they're in our heads too a bit. But I'll talk to them and say, all right, we shouldn't be here. This is your part of the woods. It's a beautiful night. We are just here because we're curious about you, but we're going to leave. Let us leave peacefully. And they typically will.
It's really interesting. Now, Rick, with your expertise and your experience doing this, is there an area of the United States or an area of the world that you can't wait to get to and explore? Or is it a location that you can't disclose yet? Is there a spot that you're just I can't wait to check that out and do my own expedition through that territory?
Nobody's ever asked me that question. That's a very good question. I've been in a lot of places. Vermont, the Adirondacks, North U. Those are great places. Some spots in Florida. There were very different geography, very different foliage. Colorado, I mentioned. British Columbia, the Midwest, northern. You wouldn't believe Iowa, Northeast Iowa, tons of activity. All over Michigan, the upper peninsula of Michigan, a lot of activity up there. Wisconsin, Georgia, the Smokies. The Smokies is very active. So I've been to a lot of places, a lot of different geography, a lot of different topography. I don't know that there is a spot that I say, gosh, I have to go. I haven't been there. I've never been to Yosemite looking for them. I guess I would probably put that on my list. That would probably be a place I would like to get out and do some Bigfooting. I haven't been to yet. That's big country. The foliage, the trees are big. You can see a long distance even in the foliage. I always look at that too. When I'm thinking, where can I go Bigfooting? I like to be able to see through the foliage, especially for at night when we're using thermal imaging cameras to try and pick them up as they're moving. So, but I think that's an area I'd like to go. Good, very good question.
I have a double question. I'm squeezing in. Okay. So number one is I want to do the northern New Jersey. I'm going to start saving money for that. Okay. Now, Rick, this is a two-part question. What keeps you doing these expeditions and following Bigfoot? And have you had any telepathic messages from Bigfoot before an expedition not to go on it? Have you had them communicate with you? Because I believe since you've had so much interaction, they know who you are.
Okay. Very good questions. Again, Mary, I always appreciate your questions. They're very good. Well, they're thoughtful, and I appreciate it. I heard you talking about the Dream Journal before, and I've listened to some of your other on-air broadcasting and things. And you do go at the subject matter as I do. I mean, the subject matter you cover, you talk about it not as you're trying to prove it, but you're like it's real. And I do a lot of presentations in front of people, and those people come up to me afterwards and say, "You're the first person I've ever heard talk about this subject that's not trying to prove to me. What do you just right away say it's real, and here it is. Here's what you know about it." And that's how I look at this. So your question about the telepathy and the messages, I have not had dreams about Bigfoot. Maybe occasional one here and there, but nothing that I would say was very, very impactful. I have had telepathy activity with them numerous times in the woods where I heard a voice in my head or something was said in my head. I had a huge tree pushed down right behind me a long time ago. I was in a research area I had, and I had some activity with them. They were throwing things. They were playing with me, throwing things over my shoulder, probably juveniles. And I was looking through the woods with binoculars. They didn't like that I was scanning the woods with the binoculars. Must have thought it was a weapon or something. Massive tree got pushed down right behind me, and I mean right behind me. And I went back to the spot and found footprints there. But when that happened, I heard in my head, run, don't turn around, run. Over and over, clear as could be, I could hear those words. And I mean, I ran 250 yards to get out of there and scared the hell out of me. But I very clearly heard those words. I had another occasion. It was a swamp area I was in with some other folks on an expedition in northeast Iowa years ago. I went on 3 years in a row. I went on expeditions northeast Iowa. And I was in an area where we had some activity. We could hear them in the swamp. And we had stopped, and we were trying to talk to them and trying to communicate. And I cleared my mind. Sometimes I'll do that. And I'll say, if you're there, just tell me something. And I got an image in my mind of an arch. Think like a St. Louis arch. Only it looked like it was made of foliage, and it was luminescent. I didn't know what that was. That was in the spring. In September later in that year, I was out with another fellow I did some research with. We used to go out at 3 a.m. and do this kind of stuff. That's crazy. And we had some intense activity. Because between 3 and 5 in the morning, witching hour or whatever, these things are very active, which is curious to me, too. I can't figure that out. But, boy, it's like the dial gets turned up to 11 then. But sun was just starting to break through. We were hiking over some forested mountain area back towards the ravine. And I saw all of a sudden the sunlight lit up this arch. I saw this thing in the woods at a distance. So we came up, and it was clearly made. And I want to say Bigfoots had made this. There's no humans around anywhere. It was over a trail. And there was this arch. It had to be 7 feet in the air, maybe 15 feet across. And they had intertwined vegetation, foliage, trees together to build there was this arch right over the path. And the sun coming through as it was just coming up 5:30 in the morning, it kind of lit this thing up. And I saw it. That was the image I got in my head months before. Now, how the heck that happens, I don't know. But that type of thing I've had happen with these. Now, there's others I could account. I've been with other investigators that have picked up words in their head, especially if they want you to turn you back from an area. I had one investigator that I trust. I spent a lot of time with. She said to me, we turned around. She came back down the trail. She was ahead of the group. Because when we'll walk on trails, sometimes we'll split up and we'll have someone ahead and someone in the back and group in the middle. And she turned around, came back, said, no, they're telling me leave. And they're saying, please, please, please turn around. Please go back. Please. So they were communicating politely to her, but she kept hearing that word in her head. Please, please, please. So these things will communicate, and we're getting human words, not Sasquatch words, or images in their heads. And I've heard other people say that. I had a witness report I investigated last year, and he had one of these things crashing through the woods. He came out of it. So he was packing up to leave to go on a vacation in a wooded area. This is back in the 90s, but he reported it, and he took me to the spot. And this thing came crashing through the woods. It was coming up on his property. He could hear it coming out of the woods in a ravine, and he came out of the house with his gun, and he had his gun in his head. And he said it was pitch black, but he says, I pointed it where I thought it was because it came up out of the woods. He goes, I think it was standing right in front of me. And he goes, I could smell its breath. It was breathing right at me. And he said it had to be 8 foot tall. Also, it was this massive black shadow. And he goes, I'm shaking like a leaf with my gun pointed at it, and something is saying to me in my head, I will kill you. I will kill you. Don't shoot. I will kill you. And he said, I couldn't pull the trigger. He goes, I was scared to death. He said, I just stood there shaking, and it stopped, and it just ran right through its yard, went back up a mountain behind him in the woods. So how do they communicate words, or how telepathically get through to humans by putting words in their head? I don't know. But that definitely happens.
Wow.
Yeah, it's almost like they've somehow mastered what we're just learning, with psychic abilities, telepathy, all that transference of thought. So that's very, very interesting. Yeah, that I think shines light on how intelligent they are and how deceptive they can be, and probably why only now humans are starting to document it, because we have the technology, right? Like you were saying, the cell phones, we have the cameras, the specialized digital equipment, night scopes. Now, do you guys use, when you're out on an expedition, is it quite an elaborate setup of modern technology, night scopes, or what actually do you bring out on an expedition with you as far as equipment, or is that something you can't talk about?
No, I can talk about it. And we've had military grade stuff. I was on one earlier this year. It's funny because you look at what type of people get attracted to this. A lot of engineering type people, analytical teachers, people. This is something you probably understand better than me. A lot of people are very empathetic. If people that pick up vibes, their antenna are higher, empathetic feelers can pick up things. They seem to be attracted to this too. We've had psychics on some of these. I've been on a couple with them, picking up talk or vibes from them. I was on one. We had a psychic. She was talking. We had a group the first night we were together, and she was talking about they're here. And she just all of a sudden started talking. We had a meal the first night. We're gathered around, going to talk about how we're going to deploy groups. And she starts telling the group. She said, "They know you're here. I can feel it. They know you're here, and they're wondering what you're going to do and why you're here because." People have come to this spot before investigating them. And while she's talking, all of a sudden, about 100 yards away across a pond, this massive tree gets pushed over. I mean, and we all see it because it's just going towards dusk. And this tree gets pushed out of the woods down towards us. We went over to that spot and cast a 17.5-inch track later on. Okay? So they were there. She picked up on it. And they let us know overtly, hey, we're here. So it isn't always deceptive. It isn't always kind of like they're fooling around. That being said, equipment-wise, I don't think you can out-tech these folks. I've been on podcasts on this with discussions about Bigfoot, and before people say, what do you think is the best thing to use? And what grade of FLIR do you use? And I'm like, I don't think you can out-tech these things. I really don't. I use a little bit of it, but your five senses are by far and away the best. You can't, because you can go blind using this stuff. You're walking around the woods looking at night vision, military grade night vision. You take your eyes away if they can't see anything for 10 minutes. That's one reason. Second, for whatever reason, these things can zap the energy out of the tools you're using because it happens all the time. We have energies go dead, batteries go dead on things that are fully charged. It happens all the time around them. I've seen the opposite. Try this one out. I was with a group, a couple of, again, two military guys, another guy. One of the military guys had his phone with him. He goes, my phone's dead. It's down to like 9% power. He goes, it's completely dead. He says, and he was walking. All of a sudden, they had some activities. One of these things was in the woods, and his phone lit up like crazy in his pocket. And he pulled it out. It was back to 100%. Now that's in reverse. It's like they took and supercharged him with some energy, and I don't know how that happens either. So I've had walkie-talkies in my hand, just make all kinds of gibberish noises, just gets unusable around these things. I don't, in the end, I like to use parabolic microphone and headphones. So you can get parabolic microphone, one of these little spy kit type things on Amazon for $40. They're great. Bring those with a nice set of headphones and assign someone in your group the job of just listening while you're out there in the woods. Have them just scan 180 degrees, 360 degrees. You'll pick stuff up. You'll hear something when it's moving before the rest of the group does. I think those things work great. I like stuff like that. As primitive as that is, works great. But your eyes and your ears are the best thing you could use when you're out there. You can't out-tech them. I like thermal better than night vision. Night vision casts an infrared scan on the area, and they pick that up. They see that. They can see the infrared. So in other words, infrared, when you're looking through binoculars that are infrared, or even trail cameras, they will illuminate the area that the animal or the creature has been detected to be in before they take a picture on it. So there's a split second or so that happens. And I believe the Bigfoots could see that, and they just kind of jump out of the way.
That's interesting.
Related to this, Rick, I know we've taken up quite a bit of your time, and we're going to probably be letting you go soon, but I have one final question, and I don't know if Michael does. In the beginning of the show, I was sharing some different cryptids, and one that I mentioned was the Yeti, the abdominal snowman. Do you think that there is any similarity between Bigfoot and the Yeti? Because some of what's described is similar. Do you know anyone who's had a Yeti experience? Yeah,
I think so. Yeti is just, in my mind, just another type of Bigfoot, or another name for the same type of creature. It's a tall, ape-slash-human-like creature, Tibetan, that part of the world. But there are these types of creatures seen around the world have different names. If you want to start researching names for it, names like Wendigo, Yeren is North China, Orang Pendek is in Indonesia, Wendigo is out there, Yowie is Australia, Wendigo is Canada. I mean, there's different names for these things all around the world, but they're all variations on types of Bigfoot, if you will. And the difference between where we are here, Mary and Michael, is, you know, whether it's our military, our government, or our compliant media, it's just, it's a laughingstock type thing, the way it's handled all the time. Other countries don't treat it that way. It's acknowledged in a lot of places. I've been to China a lot of times. I travel to China a lot in my business life. I used to talk to people about the Yeren, and they would tell you where it is. It's north of Beijing in the mountain. They tell you exactly where it is and describe it, and there's nothing. Vietnam, there's a lot of Bigfoot-type creatures in the mountains there, and they just acknowledge them. You can't hunt them. They have laws against it. Don't shoot at them, leave them alone. But they acknowledge it's there. Native Americans all acknowledge it and talk about it. You know, it's this whole thing we got. Maybe it's like the alien, the UFO thing, etc., blah, blah, blah. But, you know, you got to cover it up and keep the public from knowing about it, etc. Videos go up online on Bigfoot a lot, and then they come down. But I think Yeti is just another variation on that. One thing I was going to say to you, though, too, and I know we don't have too much time left, but you were mentioning Chupacabra before, you know, which Chupacabra is seen. I mentioned Dogman. I do a lot of research, and I do some presentations that I give. I gave one in Virginia not too long ago about different types of cryptids that are out there. So if you start, cryptid just means it's an undiscovered or legendary type of creature and not acknowledged by science. But if you get out and you start looking at these things, and you look at them over time, the Native Americans have names for different types. Thunderbirds. I mean, there are a lot of different types, but you'll see similar types of cryptids around the country. So a cryptid that shows up in the Midwest may be the same as one in Florida, and talked about in legend over time. And, you know, how does that happen? What I wonder about these days, and you mentioned frequencies too and things before, you know, maybe we're generating just enough electrical and radio frequency and sending out enough stuff out there that the activity is agitated. But it seems like there's more of these things being seen now than in the past. I know there's more people, so there's more witnesses, but there are more accounts all the time on these paranormal type creatures or cryptid type creatures. But they're falling into classifications of things that were there before a lot. Now, I've got a guy at a property in South Carolina I talk to all the time, and you can't believe the things he's seen. He's got 11 acres. He's got film of Bigfoot running across his property. He's got film of other type of cryptids that are showing up in other parts of the country, other words. He's got, I mean, all kinds of things. Why are these things all of a sudden showing up? Or, you know, is it veil thin between our world and another world? I'll get real woo on you here, but maybe this dimension and that dimension, the wall's gotten thinner and thinner or something, but it seems like any door you go through on this stuff, all of a sudden there's a lot of it showing up. And there seems to be more of it now than in the past. And I'm not sure why that is. I do know this. If you follow radio frequency and 1600 gigahertz and all that, if you watch the Skinwalker Ranch folks or Beyond Skinwalker Ranch, what they're doing, and they talk about that all the time. That's a frequency that is reserved for communication between Earth and space sort of thing. And they keep picking that frequency up where there's activity that's paranormal. I can tell you on some of the habituation sites I have, we've picked it up. And I don't know what that means, except that there's some kind of communication between our terrestrial physical existence and other worlds or other places that's active. And I don't know why that is.
It might be intentional in the case of the cryptids. They might intentionally be showing themselves more. It's not necessarily that there's more people or that we are... the veil is thinner. The veil is probably thinner, but I wonder if it's an intentional reveal because it's time now. It's also a way of everything being shown to us. So it might just continue in that direction, and you might very well see more than Bigfoots on some of these expeditions. Maybe you'll come across some of these other cryptids.
We have. I could go on, but we have, and I don't know why that is. Sometimes we're out looking for Bigfoot activity, and other things happen. We've had spiritual type things. I mentioned the orbs and that energy type. We've had a lot of times we wind up around old graveyards and things in the woods that are old hillbilly graveyards and things, and we have activity around them, voices, we recorded, we've seen things. I was on a scouting trip in December, and we had something that was jumping around in the trees up above us that really sort of looked like, well, if you know Lord of the Rings, the two guys that saw it described it as a golem-looking type creature. I had no idea what that was. But the cryptid, if you look it up, if you want to get creeped out, it looked like the rake. Look up what a rake is, but these two guys described it, and they took pictures of it up in the air, and the pictures came out sort of looked like a bundle of spaghetti up in the trees. So it was moving and phasing around so fast that it didn't come out as a physical creature. But they didn't go looking for that, So we have things happen like this. I've had some spiritual type things happen to me when I've been out on these. I had another time we'll talk about this. I felt like I was lifted off the ground, like I was up in the air above everybody, and looking down at them. It lasted for about 20 minutes. It was unbelievable. It was exhilarating, and we had activity around us. I've got a location right now about 45 minutes northwest of Asheville. That's a spiritual retreat place that's been sacred land forever, and I've been on it recently because there's Bigfoot activity there, some of the best I've seen, and I was on it walking the property with the curator last fall, and he said to me, pointed across some fields in the canyon in the woods, and he says, over there is where there's 22 acres that little people live on. He was dead serious. And we've always seen them over the years, and he said there's a whole civilization of little people that live over there. And this guy was as sober as a judge, so I think there's a lot of things out there that people see that go on. I can't explain it, but it seems like more and more of it, and I really scratch my head about that.
Well, if you're saying you scratch your head after all your experiences, then I guess we all have a lot more to learn and experience, because based on, 20 years you've been doing this now?
Well, at first, I fell into this because I had a sighting and I didn't know it. So I was at 2010, so I'm about 14 years into this, but I dove into it and started to research more and more, and got out and got active with it and got in the woods, and I still do. And you said, why do you do it? Why do I keep doing it? Because I keep learning more and more, and things seem to correlate. I go to a lot of conferences, and I speak with a lot of other people I like talking to witnesses about it, but you do see similarities, and you do learn a lot of things. And I don't believe Bigfoot is a creature to be feared. I think you got to be cautious and respectful, but I don't think it's a monster running around the woods. I do think it is a creature, a forest people, for a creature of the woods, and I do think it's both paranormal and physical in its abilities. And I think there are other creatures out there too, and other things like that are either undiscovered or now starting to come into their own because whatever. And I wonder over the next 100 or 200 years how much of this stuff is just going to be daily talked about.
Maybe we'll get some disclosure, right, from the powers that be, and we'll find out they knew about this long.
Well, so I guess my answer to that is that I don't think they know everything about this either. Mm. So it's easier to say no and just not acknowledge when you don't know everything about something than to. I mean, we've had them encounter us in expeditions in some places and ask us about stuff. You people are the experts on it. You're out here doing this all the time, kind of thing. So under the guise of being park rangers and things. So, we've had it come forward that way. So, I don't know everything about this. I know a lot about it. I'm still curious. It's thrilling. It's scary sometimes. But, I get to talk to nice people like you guys here and tell you what I've learned.
Well,
yeah, we can't
so
wait till
grateful.
You're up on the East Coast and we can jump on one of the expeditions with you. That's what I'm looking forward to.
I'm really considering about this northern New Jersey. You know that I want to do this. I've wanted to do this for years, Rick. And now that it's closer to home, it's in October. I think it's a real possibility. Although I'm not going alone, I'm definitely going to go with some friends because I don't want people to say, "Oh, that's not true," when I come back and tell them all my experiences. But I want everyone to. I want you to tell us or share, if you'd like, share with us any parting words. But you can find Rick on his Facebook. And all of this is listed on the description for tonight's show, and you can hear this anytime you want. If you want to hear a repeat, you just replay it. And he has Instagram. He is a owner of I Know Squash on the Etsy page, and there's an Instagram, and he is a BFRO .net?
.net, yes.
And tell us any parting words or anything you'd like to share with our listeners tonight.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on and listening, and I appreciate the questions too. They're very well thought out and very open-minded. So yeah, I'm an owner, and I Know Squatch. I have a creative partner, and we sell merchandise, T-shirts, hats, challenge coins, all sorts of things. But we have an Etsy store, and I Know Squatch is on Instagram, Facebook, etc. But we post a lot of things about this too. So when we have expeditions, we'll post pictures and things and learnings about that on there. So that's a good place to go. I have a stick structure book that's on there. Bigfoots will build these stick structures, tree structures in the woods, and they have patterns to them. And I've researched a lot of that, and I have a field guide on that you can get. I do go to a lot of shows, trade shows and things, and speak at shows. And I get from probably Ohio down to Florida. I get to about 6 or 8 of them a year, and I speak at different ones. I have some upcoming ones I'll be speaking at this year in North Carolina. So I am active. I'm out and about. I'm on different podcasts as a guest. I'm fortunate to have people ask me to come on and talk about experiences on it. So that's how they can find me. I'm also a recording artist, so Just Rick, I go as. People can find me on Spotify or iTunes, etc. You can find my original music on there. I have one Bigfoot-related song that's on there, actually, called Wood Booger Walk. People can listen to that.
I like that.
So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so check that out if you're going to listen to it. I'm a active gigging musician, singer-songwriter, too. But
very cool.
Yeah, so check that out. Just Rick. Is what it's called. But I guess parting words, things I would tell people on this, I made the point earlier, number one, you can't hunt these things. So don't kid yourself. It's not a hunt. People like to say, I'm going to go out and hunt Bigfoot. Well, forget that. These things live in the forest, and you show up in the forest one day and you're going to hunt them. Give me a break, So, and you have to have respect for them. I like the Native American approach. Have respect for them. If you go out in the woods and you do think they're around, or you get that feeling, you hear something that it could be a Bigfoot, be respectful to them, talk to them, acknowledge that they're there, try to make peace with it, and keep an open mind. I always ask people to be open-minded about this. So whether it's if you see something, hear something, experience something that you don't know what it is, just like Mary, you were saying a dream journal before. I love that idea. I wish I should be smart enough to do that. But write it down, draw it. Draw a picture of what you saw. Write it down, and then try to find someone like BFRO. Find someone. Maybe it's a ghosting account. Find someone you can talk to about it that might be able to shed some light on it and help you understand what you experienced. So I would leave people with that, and don't dismiss it. If all of a sudden your antenna, and Mary, you go on one of these things, your antenna are up pretty high. I think you're going to pick up on some stuff. But
I think they're going to communicate with me.
I think they are too. I really do. And I would love to be on it with you, because I'm sure they would. But just if you experience something, don't dismiss it. People too often will say, it was a bear, or, that thing flying overhead. That went on forever in the past. Grandpa told you, no, you didn't see, 2 monkeys up in the tree picking the apples. Those are just, and they would make fun of it. People don't bring it forward. Find someone you can talk to about it. Write it down in detail, best detail you can. And try to report it and get it to someone who is experienced in researching it.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rick. Now, Rick, can you give us the official pronunciation of your last name to just make sure we don't botch it for the rest of the show?
Yeah. My last name is Reles, Reles.
Oh.
Yeah, like Monica.
We weren't saying it correct.
That's all right. It's like Monica Seles, Reles.
Excellent. I appreciate that. No, thank you so much. This has been a fantastic interview. I think anyone that's listening has to be completely intrigued. Believers, non-believers, anyone that's out there, you may get a lot of new calls to jump on these expeditions. Because I think people are tuning in. They're starting to wake up, and you can't, I don't think there's any way you can not understand that there's so much more that we don't know about as humans. And I think, we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg. Very thankful for people like you that are out there. They're trying to do this in in a very you're really trying to do this from a solid foundation and really gather the information in the best way you can and present it in the best way. And for people like us or for people like me, because obviously, Mary Amy's much more knowledgeable about the area of Bigfoot and the cryptids than I am, but I'm completely intrigued by this. And just from my own upbringing of being, in the Pine Barrens and the Jersey Shore, having my own Jersey Devil experiences and just things I can't explain from, being a young child or a teenager out in the woods and have these experiences, man, I can't wait. I plan on, Mary, I think we're going on this expedition.
I think we are. We're going to bring a few other people that we know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if we're going to make it through, though, about that daughter and the father-daughter team. And I mean, but honestly, I sound all brave. Oh, yeah, I'm going on that. But I don't know if you're the first one to run out. Because, I mean, when you see one of these things, they're, 6 to 10 feet tall.
Yeah, everything in the woods is not a Bigfoot, too. So when you're out there and you're sitting in the dark and you're listening with some other people and there's 2 barred owls over your head and they're making all kinds of noises like monkey chatter and scaring you to death, just remember it's owls in the woods and they do it every night. So because or when the coyotes are on both sides of you on a trail and they're howling and making noises all of a sudden, it doesn't mean they're all going to jump on you and attack you. So you got to calm down. But if you have an experience like that, and it's really good, you can have pleasant experiences too. I was with a real quick story. I was with an investigator, and I had a group, and we were on a spot on a rise, and it's north central Tennessee area. It's a huge 12,000 acre property. It's had activity forever. Long story short, we were on a higher. We had activity down low, down in the woods, and then they kind of followed us up to the top, this rise, this area at the top. And I was doing knock type noises. They were knocking right back at 10 o'clock, at 2 o'clock. They were around us. There were blue lights going off in the woods. One of the investigators with us had an ocarina. Now, if you ever look that up, it's kind of a round musical device. And they used to make them out of gourds years ago, Native Americans and things. And he started to play the ocarina. And it makes a lot of varying whistling type sounds. He was playing it. We knew they were around us. And so he played this for a couple of minutes. And as soon as he stopped, out of the woods, we heard this very, very loud, huge creature or creature's voice go, ah. It was so pleasant, and so they loved the noise that he made, the sound, the music he played. And they liked it so much, they just exclaimed. So what I'm saying, the reason I'm telling you that is, and it was huge. It was this huge, like pleasant hum, out of the woods that these things made, this noise they made. And that was such a nice experience. We all went out, left. They didn't chase us out of the woods or anything. But, they liked the interaction. I've had to say, I play harmonica. I play harmonica in the woods. I've had them make the harmonica noises back at me. So you can have a nice dialogue with these things. You can, and you can have very pleasant encounters with them. So, I want your listeners to know it isn't all just monsters in the woods in the dark.
Well, thank you so much. It all sounds exciting and interesting, and I sense you have a book in your future beyond the structures. What's the name of your book? The stick structures, the big stick structures. Mm-hmm. And maybe some of these experiences, I don't know, or documentary. Something else.
The book sounds really cool, but I can't wait to hear Wood Booger Walk. That's as soon as we get off, I'm gonna hit that up on Spotify.
well, give it a listen. I wrote some lyrics. Some of the lyrics are talking in there about it. There's a lyric about it. Who's that peeking around that tree? And you give it a listen and see what you think. I kind of wrote from the standpoint of people what they see and what they experience with it. And Wood Booger is a common name for this thing in the South, so I just use that. It's a blues type of thing. If you like blues, rock and blues, that's what it is.
Yeah, definitely. I'm down with it.
Give it a listen. I'll probably do a book, or I do a lot of podcasts and get to talk to people. I want to get, my experiences, what I've learned out there as much. I probably will do a book someday, but I really enjoy it and appreciate you guys having me on so I could talk with you and help answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. Really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Yep.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Have a good night. Anytime. Enjoy your show.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Oh my goodness,
All right.
Michael.
So do I put that one on in the date book? You know, what is it? October, November? What are we doing?
It's October. It's October,
Okay.
and I'm thinking you and a couple other people. There's a couple people that I know are also intrigued by Bigfoot, and since it's going to be in our backyard, basically, right? I mean, not that far away.
Yeah. No.
I'll send you the link afterwards. Everyone, you can go to bfro.net and you can look up upcoming expeditions. That was Rick Reles.
Maybe we can bring a couple callers along. You know, we get something going. You, me, or a couple of our callers, Rick. Man, it's gonna be very interesting.
Oh, that would be so crazy, right? And maybe we'll do some kind of event upcoming. So everyone out there, we have possibly a guest next Thursday, which date next week's show would be July. I don't even have a calendar right here. I'm looking. Do you have a calendar, Mike? Okay, here it is.
I do.
July 18th.
I do if I pull it up on my phone. Yeah, the 18th.
Okay, so
and then
July
25th.
18th, Thursday, this at 7:30. We will have. You know what? Maybe next week we'll just have callers with psychic readings, and shoot for the following week to have.
We can do that. You know, we weren't able to take any callers tonight, but that was a great interview, and I'm glad we were able to, you know, get a solid hour plus in with Rick, because it's very interesting, you know. And this is an area, like I'll say, let's talk about mediumship, let's talk about psychic abilities, let's talk about angels. You know, that stuff I can talk for hours on, and I know a lot about it. But this is something, you know, I'm a newbie at, you know, the Bigfoot stuff, the cryptid stuff, and I find it very interesting. I'm very intrigued by it. And I think we have to really, you know, when you take a step back and you think about all the credible eyewitness accounts that have been happening now, you think about all the remote and unexplored areas, new species that we're finding all over the globe, you know, sometimes weekly, you know, you see all these different things they're uncovering through the rainforests. It's very interesting. I think science, just like us talking about the energy work that we do, there's so much that isn't disclosed, that, you know, about quantum physics and things that are absolutely known to the scientific community but haven't been disclosed publicly. And you know, just like things I've done as a scientific research medium, things that are absolutely proven in the lab, but on a large scale level, this stuff hasn't been disclosed to the general public. I think there's a lot of that going on with this type of stuff, you know, and it's really, really intriguing. And you know, I find it interesting, and if, you know, if nothing else, we get out into the woods for a couple of days, do a little hiking, and, you know, spend some time in nature, right? But I think it would be way more than that, and you know, so I
absolutely. I did
intrigued.
investigate what it's involved. So let me tell you, because we have a few minutes before our show's over tonight, but I'm going to share with you. So there is that fee. And what did he say? It's around $400, and then after you do it again, I don't know if you go back and do it again, but if you do it again, then it's cut in half.
Yep.
So what you're going to bring is you're going to bring yourself, and you're going to bring food, and you're going to bring camping equipment and clean clothes, and basically what you're getting is you're getting the experience from them. They're going to take you deep into the woods, and to locations, like Rick said, that they've heard has Bigfoot or Bigfoot sightings, and they believe it, obviously, if they're bringing a whole expedition out. And I don't know. I'm very, very excited, because I think it would be some kind of paranormal experience, and I don't know, something that is probably not a lot of people have encountered in their life. So it probably would touch you in a different way. It might be something so dramatic, because I've had those kinds of orbs that he spoke about. I knew someone that had their house was filled with them, and then they came to my home, and then they brought them with them. I know that it touches you in a way that you can't describe the feeling. So it's running on some kind of otherworldly frequency, and it might be that now he's accustomed to it, but when you first feel what it's generating into your system, it's really an unknown. All of this is unknown to your senses. So you and we might just find this like unbelievable, Michael.
Yeah, And I had to laugh when he was talking about, like, the radios cutting out, the batteries going dead, electrical interference. I mean, this is no, the funny thing, though, this is all things as energy workers, as, psychics, mediums. This is something that we experience. People that are doing trance work, this stuff happens. It's documented. So who's to say that these creatures, they're not like, who's to say they're not an advanced being that has learned to harness all these powers that as humans we're trying to still harness, or we've harnessed in the past in ancient civilizations and understand and utilized it and then got away from it, or it was hidden from us, whatever, many different philosophies around that. We're not going to get into that tonight, but who's to say they haven't slowly advanced with all these ancient civilizations, learned it, kept it, and now they've been able to harness and utilize it, so I absolutely that can happen. So as a medium, I would find it just fascinating to be out in the woods and see if I can communicate on an energetic level with these creatures. Of course you will. Or I can say, or it could be that they were here way before man was, and they're actually a species of extraterrestrials. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. That's what I'm leaning towards now. The more that I've researched and learned about this is because of their abilities, and they're very advanced. And I don't know, like I said, are they camouflaging what they really look like? Maybe they do look like this big, hairy being that's 6 to 10 feet tall. But we won't know until we go out into the woods, will we, Michael? No, so that might be an adventure. Might be an adventure that we are going to partake. Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about it before and after, and we'll share with our viewers what happened. So I will send you the link to that, and I'm really appreciative of everyone who joined us this evening. This was episode 23 about Bigfoot cryptids, and we had guest Reles, who is a Bigfoot investigator. You can find on our description everything related to Rick and how he is to be contacted. He also has a Etsy page and an Instagram page, I Know Squatch. Now, if you would like to reach out to Michael and get a reading or find out about any events that he is upcoming, you can go to his Facebook page, which is Michael Edley, not Facebook, his website, michaeledley.com. We have a Facebook page, which is Two Psychics Radio, and I have my website. You can reach out to me, MaryAmyOfficial.com, and I am receiving new clients for readings. I hope everyone has a wonderful upcoming weekend, this summer weekend. Anything else you'd like to say before we go, Michael? Just want to thank everybody for tuning in, spending this lovely 2 hours with us. We will be back at you next Thursday. It's going to be a great show. But again, on Facebook, Eye of the Spirits with Michael Edley, or michaeledley.com, or Two Psychics Radio Show. You can find us on any of those. But if you want to see any of my upcoming events, you want to be part of any of those, or you want to try to schedule a private reading or a group reading, a gallery, anything at your location or your facility, if we have other facility owners or managers or coordinators out there, we'd love to be a part of that. But no, I'm thankful for this show. I'm thankful for you, Mary Amy. Thankful for all our listeners. And, I'm excited for next week. I missed, we had that week off last week, and I missed it, and it's good to be back. It's good to be back, and I'm glad to be here. Yeah, well, we're good friends, Michael, and I'm so glad that we're doing this together. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful evening and be well. Blessings to you all. Write down your dreams when you wake up. Have a fantastic night, and we'll see you next week. Okay, bye.